please welcome to the stage our good friend, the wonderful wizard known as Tom Pohl.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Just kidding. My name is Tom Pohl. I've gotten a chance to talk here a couple times before, and I always, sounds really weird. Does this sound weird to anybody else? It's kind of, yeah. Oh, he's working on it. I always love coming and talking at SecDSM because I get to nerd out with all y'all. And tonight's no different. Tonight, I'm first of all, who I am. I'm the director of penetration testing for LMG Security. We're a little cybersecurity company based out of Missoula, Montana. I don't know. I've been around. I've been in the industry. Well, I've only done cybersecurity from the offensive side for the last 5 years. And before that, I was on the blue team side, much like probably many of you in the room, where I had to defend things from the evil internet. So now I get to do things from the other side. So I get to break into networks, and I get to find issues in software, and get to exploit it. And that's me. So our agenda. So we're going to talk about kind of a case study, mostly, about an end-to-end issue that we found on an external penetration test. So we were testing an organization from the internet. So as if a bad guy were coming in, we're testing a particular client, and then what we found, and then what we were able to do from the external perspective. And then we're going to talk about the vendor response, and then kind of where we've gone from there. Because this is all from a case it was about almost 2.5 years ago at this point, and so lots of time has passed. I wish I could say the same for the amount of fixes to the vulnerabilities have all been remediated, but we'll go from there. All right, so first of all, what are we talking about? So we're talking about, in particular, water treatment facilities. So in the last, several years, there's been some pretty high-profile water treatment plant issues that have arrived from the internet, right? Cyber issues where hackers have gotten into a water treatment facility, either, changed values of mixes of chemicals and water, or otherwise cause disruption in water systems. So there's been several of these, and especially right now with the geopolitical issues with Iran and so forth. I think the two main areas that I think we all should. What's that? We're going to talk about muddy water. No, we're not going to get into all the different issues, but just to know, especially right now, a lot of the things that I think we should all be concerned about are some of the most important things that keep us alive, and that's power and water. And so today we're talking about water because this is what I've seen on the internet. Now, it all started with a routine external penetration test. So companies hire us to look at their internet-facing resources and see if we can find any issues with them. And I myself, since I'm the director of penetration testing, I actually don't take my own engagements normally, but all my coworkers do, and I get to hop in and cause mayhem and destruction. No, I get to hop in and I get to look at interesting issues. So I manage and mentor the team, and so often I can come in and show or look for things and teach them about stuff that maybe is more unique and more esoteric that might not be something that a lot of people see on a day-to-day basis. So one day. One of my coworkers, I think it was Robert, he's not here today. Actually, one of my coworkers is here today, Parker. Parker, hey, there he is in the back. Hi, Parker. I love bringing my coworkers here because they don't believe that there's a really high-tech community in Iowa, but there is. So, Parker, do you believe? I mean, he might believe. All right, he doesn't believe. So anyway, Robert brings to me, he's like, I found this website on our client's network externally available, and he's like, I I've never seen this before. I don't know what it is. Can you take a look at it for me? And I took one look at it. I said, ooh, that looks like some kind of a SCADA interface. So something that, like industrial control that directly connected to the internet. And so it basically kind of looked like this from the outside. You saw like a bunch of pumps and water tanks and things of that nature. And you see there's a little login in the corner, but already we had lots of information without even logging in. We're like, this seems bad. This doesn't seem like something that you'd want out there on the internet. Just like always, all client information has been redacted. You're never going to get out of me who this was. But this was hanging out publicly accessible on the internet. So I didn't know what this was. I've never actually myself seen this before. And so what do? I start Googling, right? So I start like finding unique items and artifacts in this website, and I try to figure out where this came from. And I actually found the vendor. It's called Microcom. And basically, it was really cool. I went to Microcom's website because, whenever I can, if I can get the software that our client is running and look at it, I'm going to be much more lethal in finding vulnerabilities in it. So I went to their website, and they had a support area where I could download patches. Well, and then I clicked on I want to stop here for a second because I didn't say this up front. I like my talks to be interactive. So if you want to ask a question, you're dying and you don't want to wait till the end, interrupt me. And if you have a good question, I have good shot glasses. I will check at you, just like always. So at any rate, all right. So back to the story. So I go to their website and I go to the support site and I'm like, ooh, I want to get the latest updates. And they're like, okay, what's your serial number? What's your name and what's your email address? So I put in X for all of those, and I click the submit button, assuming it's going to be like, no, and it's like, hey, here's your software you can download. And I'm like, yes. So I download the software, and already we're in communication with our client. We're like, hey, you've got a thing here on the internet that is probably shouldn't be there. And then what I do is I like to find a way to, beyond a shadow of a doubt, say, you need to take this off the internet today. And so that's what I did. So I downloaded the software, and I started looking through it. And it was very obvious to me that, so what we were looking at was a human-machine interface. So this is basically, in the water treatment control plant, you've got your PLCs and your SCADA devices. Yeah, like that box over there on the wall is definitely some kind of a SCADA device. And these control valves, turning on and off, also measuring different levels of chemicals and flow through systems and things of that nature. And it seemed like their back-end system had been developed over a long period of time, and it appeared like they bolted on this little web front end to it. And so it didn't look like it was designed properly. It looked like it was what I call accumulated, right? So they started with a back-end product, and then they just started tacking on other things and other features. And what they have today was kind of an accumulated product that they developed over some period of time. And so it also didn't look like it had a very consistent security model. So instantly, I find one thing that makes me go, OMG, this has to come off the internet right now. And that was basically there was a lot of PHP on the web interface, and there was one particular PHP script called npass echo. And what this did was it verbatim sent whatever you sent on the command parameter in the URL directly to the SCADA backend. It did no validation, it did no sanitation, and there's no authentication. So every other page on this web application had authentication, like making sure you're logged in, little things like that. This one, none of that. And so literally, you could just add some if you knew what those commands were. So say maybe somebody that had a copy of the software that knew how to reverse engineer could look up what some of these commands are. Now you can see kind of what the potential damage is that could be done with sending unauthenticated SCADA commands directly to the back end. And so I did that. And so this screen here is kind of one of the requests that I made. And if you look down here in the corner, I don't know that I've got a good pointer view of it. I don't know how this thing works. But down there's a download setup button. Like you could actually like download the configuration of the software. So like I found one of these commands that let me look at the configuration. So it actually let me download the configuration of the tool, all in one simple HTTP request, no login needed. And so here's some of the other kind of back-end commands. Some of them are authenticated, some of them are not, some of them are destructive, some of them are manipulative. Like I could actually change values. I of course didn't change any values or do anything malicious because this is an active water treatment plant that we were testing. But all of this was available to me through the SCADA interface. So, like I said, I pulled the configuration file. So kind of give you a history of this and why this is important today. Because I did this test 2 years ago, almost 2.5 years ago now, and the vendor fixed it. And they told me that they were fixing it, completely. And well, it turns out they fixed it for my client. And so, my client, they immediately took it off the internet, so they have to now be behind a VPN. Thank goodness. But then, and then they removed this because this backdoor, or what I'm calling backdoor, they're calling it pass-through, whatever, does not need to be there at all for anybody ever on the internet. But then about a year later, after this engagement, for some reason I was thinking about the software again. It just kind of came up in my mind, and I'm like, I wonder how their software is doing. So I actually went back to their website and I tried to re-download the latest update, and luckily they'd removed that functionality, so you can no longer download this off of their website. I assume you have to probably call them and they'll vet you before they'll give you a URL. But if you knew what the URL was that you could download the software, and you hit that again, you get the latest version again. So since I had that URL, I went ahead and pulled it. And I'm like, well, maybe this was the version from the year ago. And so I checked them, and sure enough, the code had changed. And so, yeah, question. So the question is, did someone go on the internet and Oh, yeah. So since it was behind a form, the internet machine, I actually looked. These are not available. So this is not available in the Wayback Machine. I actually did kind of go back there extensively to see, and no, it is not available on the Wayback Machine. So there is no archive of these downloads public accessible. Here, let me send you a shot glass. Close. I'm no NFL player. Sorry. Great question. Where was I? I was talking about. Oh yeah, so new software. So I compare it, and the software has changed. In fact, some of the timestamps in the software a year later had timestamps from a month prior. So I knew it was up to date. It was still the latest up to date software that they had been publishing. And guess what was in there? Any guesses? the pass through, right? This back door was still in there. And so I'm like, this is terrible. At this point, my alarms start going off, and I'm like, and I start looking at like, how big is this, right? So I start looking at how many of these things could possibly be on the internet. It's going to be just this one, right? No. So one of the things that they distribute with the software is a TLS certificate with the private key for star.scadaweb.net. Hell yeah. Anybody seen my talk on private keys in public places? So they intentionally distribute, and there was a CA blessed certificate, so it'll be trusted by every browser. So they intentionally put out this software because they want it to be accessible on the internet. I don't know why you would do that, but they made that design choice. And so that actually, for me, as somebody that's interested in finding all the bad instances on the internet, is great, because now I can go to places like Shodan or Census, or even in this case DNS Dumpster, and I can say, what instances do you see out there, of this certificate publicly accessible? The answer today, because I just pulled it earlier today, was 316. Yeah. Yeah. It was, yeah. In fact, I think I got on the slide here. Yeah, it was 200 plus was the blast radius. Now it's actually, I'm using a different tool today, and I found 316. Here's through like DNS Dumpster, I actually was able to pull host names. And so I can actually see the actual, because what happens is when you register the software then uses their dynamic DNS provider to give you a host name on their SCADAweb.net domain. And so then you've got an actual host name that your engineers or whoever that you want to access this can go to in a web browser. And so, like I said, they're intentionally putting these out there instead of putting it behind a firewall or a VPN. Backing up a little bit, we actually engaged the vendor back when 2 years ago. I actually had phone calls with this vendor, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is terrible. We're going to fix this," and I believe them. I know. I'm from the Midwest. Trust and romance scams might work on me. Just kidding. It's a joke. Hey, by the way, I don't know anything about ATM jackpotting, but I do have an ATM in the garage. So if any, oh, that's 2 of us. Yeah, Trevor's got one too. Anyway, sorry. Going back to what was stated earlier from our previous speaker. So at any rate. No authentication. They were going to fix it, and the truth of the matter is that they didn't. But when I started looking and surveying the internet, I started. This was almost a year and a half ago. I was like, I need to figure out how to contact these people, right? Because it's been a year. These backdoors are still in many systems, and so I started testing and seeing and some of them started being remediated. Some of them didn't have this script, which was great. I'm like, this is wonderful. But then there were still quite a few that did. So what I did was, I needed to figure out how do I contact these people, right? So luckily, these configs had phone numbers in them with where you sent, the people that were getting the alerts from the SCADA system. So I was pulling, yes, question. The individual companies that were, yeah, because it was clear to me that I'm not entirely certain that the software vendor was being proactive in reaching out at this point, because it'd been a year at this point. So I started figuring out who I could contact at all these companies, right? And so in collecting that information, I could kind of get a good feel for how many were still vulnerable. And there was quite a few at that point. And then again, this year, it was actually just about 2-3 weeks ago, I downloaded the software again, and I started looking again. A lot more of these have had this vulnerability removed, but I can tell you for certain today that number is greater than, that are still vulnerable today, the number is still greater than 0, and which is still bad. Yeah, and I've actually been in communication with this company again, being like, please, for the love of all things good, take them off the internet and encourage your clients. Yes, Trevor. Last Wednesday. You get another one. So this is the first real disclosure publicly. I had a private event last week at the state of Iowa where I gave a presentation that, and the FBI and Homeland Security were there, and I wasn't arrested yet. So I hope I'm okay. Yeah, question back here. So the question is, are there any legal ramifications for going behind the software company's back? Is that what you said? That's a good question for a lawyer. I do hear that often intent is important, and my intention is to secure the internet and fix the things that are bad on the internet. So. If I was a bad guy, it would be a bad thing to do. But I'm not a bad guy. I'm a good guy. And my intention is to get these things fixed. So, but that sounds like a great question for a lawyer. I am not a lawyer. All right. So same backdoor. I like I said, I pulled the software a few different times, and I did always notice that the code did change. And the backdoor is still there today. But there are most of the instances that I found on the internet do not have this backdoor anymore. The vast majority are so either the company is communicating to each client one-on-one, or somebody else is finding the same things that I found and is also contacting these organizations, or maybe they're starting to talk amongst themselves, right? Often, especially in one particular state where I alerted one, all the other ones in that state were all remediated. So hopefully they're all talking to each other, but this is still, like I said, the number is still greater than 0. And so this is potentially out there. And the other bad part is when I say there's 300 of that certificate out there, that's still legit today. They may not have this particular vulnerability, but we're going to get into that later. And so what does this look like from a defender's point of view, right? Like what's in your inbox when an attacker is exploiting these issues, right? And the answer is you're not going to see anything. Because I was using the software the way it was intended. And often these types of systems don't have as much alerting and logging as we would hope, right? And I didn't use any malware. I didn't have to do anything malicious. I didn't deploy any scripts. I didn't do anything. I just used the software that was available on the internet. But you guys are looking for EDR events. You're looking for lateral movement and privileged escalation and known bad IP addresses and logins from unusual geographic ranges, but probably not on your SCADA devices. You're probably looking at that from your Active Directory environment or from your Office 365. And so this kind of stuff often is kind of like printers on your network. Who's syslogging from your printer on your network, right? Nobody. And it's similar, I think, to these SCADA devices as well. All right, so that was February 2024. I have a typo there. One engagement, I found one big bug. It was enough for me to say, hey, this needs to be off the internet today. But that's where I stopped the analysis. Today, same human plus Claude Code. So a few weeks ago, when I re-downloaded the software again, I decided to use my new best friend, Mr. Claude Code, or is it Mrs. Claude Code? I don't know. Maybe it's Santa Claus Code. And basically, I was really interested in seeing the capabilities of Claude. And now that like Mythos, actually I did all this research before Mythos came out. Everybody familiar here with Mythos? So it's the new AI hotness that none of us are going to get. Well, maybe. So new AI hotness that maybe someday we'll get access to. And I didn't use Mythos because I don't have access to it. I actually didn't even use Opus, which is their top of the line publicly accessible model. I used Sonnet. So with Sonnet, I was like really interested. I'm like, do you think it? I was like, I said to myself, do you think this thing can even find the issue I found 2.5 years ago? And the answer is overwhelmingly yes. And so what happened was I had it look at the software. I had to kind of poke and prod it a little bit. I actually shared with my team my prompts. I literally had 11 prompts. That's all it took. And I went from, a fresh code base to 42 vulnerabilities, 14 of which were actually at the time 13 were critical and 14 were high, and 42 vulnerabilities overall. And it did find my vulnerability. So I'm like, yes, it's smart enough to find my vulnerability, and OMG, all this, so much more. And so I validated all of them. I actually created a report and sent it to Microcom, because I was like, look, guys, you're not my client. I don't expect any money. I just want you to fix this and encourage all of your customers to take this thing off the internet today. And just like, previous, I don't get a lot of response from them other than, yep, we got it. We're looking at things, and have a nice day. So I'm not getting a lot of good feedback from them, and it's been 2.5 years. So and actually I was using my $17 subscription to Claude. So my point is, the capabilities of large language models today for doing reverse engineering is amazing, right? So without even having this fancy big tool, I could reverse engineer and find some critical vulnerabilities. Now, do you remember the configuration file I showed you earlier? Well, it gets worse, then a couple weeks ago, anyways, I'm sitting at Central Campus on a Sunday afternoon because my daughter and some of her cohorts are doing the National Cyber League competition, the team competition. And so they're killing it. They're in the top, the top team from Central Campus, 6th place in the nation. And my daughter, she's here back there, hi. She was working on doing a decryption of a log. So she was like looking at this XML file and trying to figure out this decryption from some indicators of compromise. And I was like, I was working on this particular presentation. And I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot. A year and a half ago, I was looking at how, because one of the things that they're storing in these config files is passwords. And I looked at these passwords, I'm like, this doesn't look secure. It's not, a hashed format. Like, it looked like straight up reversible encryption. And I started using Ghidra, and I was reverse engineering how they're doing the encryption. And I got sidetracked and never came back to it. And I was like, maybe I can get my new best friend, Santa Claus, to figure out how the encryption works. And so Claude and I sat there, and we went back and forth a little bit. And sure enough, Claude figured it out. They figured out how to crack the encryption. And then not only that, so it's using this is what I didn't talk about last week, was it found there's this library that was kind of baked into their product. It's a third-party library. They assumably paid for it. And it's doing what they call proprietary encryption. So I think this is a really good notion, that if you have a product saying that they're doing proprietary encryption, run, don't walk away from the product, do not use, because what this software does is basically it takes a password, and you feed that password in with the password or the thing that you want to encrypt, and then it does some maths to it, and it creates an encrypted output, and it's apparently reversible, and it is so reversible. When Claude figured out the algorithm, it takes about 100 milliseconds to decrypt all of the passwords. And so, and what's really interesting is a lot of these like kind of homegrown encryptions usually use some form of like XOR or something else. This one didn't. This one actually was using a man, it's escaping me now. It was a different math technique, but it's a two's complement. It was using a two's complement technique in order and it got even better, because even the passphrase, they obfuscated the passphrase in the source code. They actually had some bytes in there, but then you do some math on the bytes, and it turns out there's actually a passphrase that they're calculating in order to come up with the actual passphrase. It was terrible. Yes, Trevor. So the question is, did AI reverse engineer this, or did I? And the answer is AI did this 100%. I took some prompting from my standpoint that I'm like, because it was identifying strings and things, and I'm like, okay, that's good. Like, dig into that. Let's figure out what that is. That looks like it's something significant, and then it ran from there, right? It's like, oh my, it was. I've never seen AI so animated when it like figured it out. Like it was like literally like I figured it out. I mean, it was really impressive. Now, what's funny is like even though I figured out how to reverse engineer the encryption, or sorry, Claude. Let's give credit where credit's due. The one username and or the one password I decrypted, the username was water. Anyone want to guess what the password was? Water. That's right. So even though they chose terrible encryption, the humans were involved, and they also chose terrible passwords. And so, like, no. In fact, the username was uppercase water, and the password was uppercase water. It was exactly the same. So because humans are in the mix, they're choosing bad passwords. Another reason why these things shouldn't. And there's no multi-factor authentication. I mean, the list goes on as to why these things should not be on the internet. In fact, one of the other things that you could do, like their web interface had some brute force protections, but with the pass-through command, I could actually hammer on the back-end SCADA with as many passwords as fast as I could go until I crack it. But now I actually didn't need to, because I can actually decrypt the passwords, because I can get the password file that had the encrypted passwords and actually decrypt it. And then what happens is after you decrypt it, then you could log in as as that user and actually use the interface the right way as opposed to the wrong way. All right. So this is the kind of the reverse engineered function. Like you can see here, it's math, and there's arithmetic involved. But then, so what's cool is that after doing all this, I asked Sonnet, I'm like, hey, will you build me an attack chain where I can go from nothing all the way to full compromise, expecting it to have like the I'm sorry, I can't do that for you, sir. And this was even before, so I now actually have, I applied to Anthropic to be a security researcher so that things aren't going to be told no to me when I ask it to do evil things on the internet. And it's funny, I got zero pushback from Claude. I think Claude was like invested, like, let's see what we can do here. Let's talk about this. Because it's funny, because now that I've got this special designation from Anthropic, now I actually get pushback and be like, I don't think I can do that for you. I think, before then it's like really interested, but now, so it didn't give me one walkthrough how to go from nothing to full compromise in a unique and interesting way. It gave me 5 full chain walkthroughs. And so we're going to walk through one of these chains that it gave me. So basically, it's a real simple. It's like pull the config, decrypt, log in, right? And so that's exactly kind of what it wants me to do. It's like, okay, go to this URL, go grab that config, just like I talked about earlier, and then you decrypt the passwords using it. Actually, it's cool. I never gave Claude passwords. I had Claude create me a Python script so then I could decrypt the password. So one thing and this is really important, I think, with the governance of, especially when you're dealing with somebody else's critical data, don't send data to a third party you don't trust. Like, I wouldn't send data directly to Claude. I'd send it to maybe Amazon Bedrock. But in this particular case, what I do is I always say, build me a tool, right? So then I'm the one in control with sending it the encrypted password and having it spit out the unencrypted password. So Claude never had any access to quote unquote encrypted data. So that's something in consideration. I always have it make tools. I actually have a really neat library of tools I've been working on. Maybe I open source one of them. It's called OopsKey. If you want to look at that later, that's kind of a fun one. But at any rate, so and then the third step of this particular attack chain is login as a real admin. And the danger here is that, like, even after these things are secured and the backdoors are removed, the credentials, if you haven't changed them, still work. Right? And so often these logins are, and then now it's secured where it's like you don't get the picture of the water treatment facility. You now just get username and password. when they've remediated it, which is good, sort of, except for the fact that, like I said, there's no MFA, there's no, and if somebody, if I can do this, I guarantee you there's nation states out there that are doing this as well, and they probably already did this before me, right? And so this is why this needs to be taken off the internet today. And in fact, if you have any SCADA stuff, I'd recommend taking it off the internet. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of VNC hosts that have no authentication that are directly in there controlling SCADA interfaces or HMIs, human machine interfaces out there today that aren't even web-based. So anyway, take it off the internet. And like I said, that was just one attack chain. Here's 4 more. One was like brute force login, because there is no brute force detection when you use the SCADA pass-through, and then run anything. Another one, it actually found functionality where I could actually upload a script and then have that script be executed in the web front end, and then you could basically get shell access directly to the machine that you compromised. Another one was skip SCADA. PLCs are wide open. I could rewrite firmware, right? I could actually upload firmware directly to the PLCs through this pass-through and actually rewrite the PLCs themselves to do whatever the evil attacker wanted me to do, or me as the evil attacker. Anyway. And the third one I think is the most alarming, literally, and that is you can log in and say, hey, you've got an alarm level. If this chemical or this pH or whatever gets to this level, alarm. Well, what if I'm a bad guy and say, well, no, that alarm level is going to be here now instead of here. And then I'm going to crank it up so that I'm underneath that new alarm threshold. So when bad things happen, like a Flint, Michigan kind of an example, were to happen, the appropriate users aren't even getting alerted to it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this cloud thing is evil, right? It's thought through this pretty deeply as to what could actually be done. And so that's kind of it in a nutshell. Critical infrastructure should not be directly connected to the internet. I mean, I don't know how much I can stress that enough. If you're at all involved in critical infrastructure or you see it on the internet, see something, say something. Isn't that what they say? Yeah. So at any rate, take it off the internet. OT does not belong there. And then, hire somebody to come pen test your stuff, right? Come look at your organization from an external perspective to see your organization the way that an attacker would see it. Because, like I said, sometimes you may not think that something's out there, and it turns out it is. Anyways, question. So the question is, if I were an evil bad guy, what could I have done? And the answer is a lot. And so some of those commands that I showed you earlier, some of them are write commands. Like I could actually turn valves on and off, right? I could change levels of chemical mixes. I could do, I could really do anything that an engineer that was legitimately using the system could do. Here's a shot glass. Close. I was really close-ish. People on the internet aren't going to know. That was a great question up here. So they reiterated that they're interested in making change. And like I said, there's a lot of these systems that aren't out there the way that I found them 2.5 years ago. And so hopefully I don't have any insight into who actually influenced that change. I'm hopeful that it was the vendor, but I have no evidence as to who it was. Hey. Yeah, back there. So the question is how old was this microcom device? That's a really interesting question. I think most of these were hanging out there for quite some time. In fact, that one informational screen that I showed you where I downloaded the config from, it actually would tell me the make and model of the computer and even the service tag. So the one there says a Dell Optiplex with the service tag, I can actually go to Dell, put in the service tag, and that particular piece of hardware was out of warranty by 2 years. So that kind of gives you an indicator of how long it was likely hanging out there on the internet. Is likely, more than 3 years since the warranty on the physical device that it was running the software was expired. Assuming that they put it on a new computer, I suppose that's a possibility too. Maybe they repurpose somebody's old desktop to put the web interface on. I don't know, but yeah. Question. Well, when they delivered it from Dell in that particular case, absolutely. But that interface also told you the exact operating system version and host name and how much disk space was available and everything else that you could possibly want. It was basically mostly, it looked similar to like PHP info, kind of an output. Yeah, read. Yeah, so the question was, are there any interfaces or any of these that I found that I couldn't readily figure out who they belong to? And the answer is, that's why these cell phone numbers were great. Like I actually got people's direct cell phone numbers from these configs because one of the things that it used on the back end was like it had Twilio integration. So like it actually sent text messages. And so the phone numbers of the people receiving the text messages were in there. So I could actually call them on the phone and be like, I don't know who you are, but for the ones that had this vulnerability, absolutely. Yeah. Yep. In the back. How many unique passwords? Lots. Lots and lots. Yeah. Can someone repeat the question for me? No, I don't. I was not there to root other people's equipment. I was there to find out who they are to be able to contact them. So no, that was not any in the purview of what I was doing. Here, let me send you back a shot glass. Yeah. That would be a sophistication level that 0% of these people had. Yeah, question. No, sir. Nope. Everybody was very. I have a good, nice face, good smile. Yeah, question. That's. What are indicators of compromise that me and or Claude identified? Well, basically, calling the script is definitely a very large indicator of that. Just like with anything. Also, you could look for brute force logins, right? Look for assumably, IPs that have connected to your systems through the web interface, not from your region. Yeah, from Iran. I think I'm getting worse. Sorry. Yeah, question back there. I'm sorry. Can you? I can't. Those 42 vulnerabilities are from the current software release. Hey, that was pretty close, ish. Yeah, no, that was actually the current software. Go ahead. Was there what? Predictable salt in the password? 0, no. No. These were not hashes. This is it was using a form of asymmetric or of a form of symmetric encryption. So there is no salt. In fact, all the passwords, the encrypted versions were approximately the same length as the passwords. So that's why when I looked at them, like these don't look really encrypted. They're sort of encrypted. Yeah. Any more questions? All right. Well, thank you. Oh, one more. So the question is, did the software company have any kind of bug bounty or vulnerability disclosure process? I don't even think they know how to spell CVE. All right. Well, thank you, everybody.